I'm starting on the engine. I'm going through my hardware and making sure I have everything set up beforehand, because a lot of time is spent on Genevieve getting the hardware squared away. I have a baggie of bolts for the SWEM bracket here, and it's labeled bracket to bolt to block, and they look really long. They're actually quite a bit longer than the factory bolts, but there's also no bushing in place. Anyway, the threads in here go pretty far in, and I'm just going to chase them out with a 5/16 18 thread chaser, because there's so much dirt that's just caked into these holes, as you can see as I'm coming out, that it's making it very difficult to get this bolt seated all the way properly. And I've had these bolts break off before, not these exact bolts, but I've had bolts in here break off, probably due to vibration. That was using bushings and modifying the generator bracket to fit an alternator, whereas this one is just straight up, no bushing, just bolted right to the block. You shouldn't have any problems with vibration between this surface and that surface to potentially break the head of the bolt. Either way, we want a good surface. We want this to make full contact if possible, and we need to find out just how far down it's gonna go. So I chased it all the way in and I put a piece of tape. Now I know this is how deep that hole goes. With the holes chased all the way through, it still looks like this bolt's gonna be too long, and I'm not gonna use that many washers, so we're gonna go and size down. I'm at Ace Hardware. Most of the hardware on the block is 5/16 18, and then you get to the water pump, and all of a sudden you're in metric. M8 by 1.25. What are you? 4 small for the cam gear, 2 for the gen. Yep. When shopping for hardware, your hands will get pretty dirty as you're handling the old stuff, and you don't want to be a baby about it and be that guy that wears gloves. But if you want to be an extra baby, never leave home without your wipes. First steps are to get the engine up on the hoist and then attach it to the stand. But before it gets put on the stand with the adapter, it needs the rear main seal, because this is really the best time to put it on. You're going to want the rear main seal on before you put the oil pan, because the oil pan gasket does sit along the bottom of that. So once that's all installed, this is going in place. The rubber on that rear main seal is actually very old, so it will be swapped out sooner or later, but that will not affect our oil pan installation. Removing the tape exposes all the unpainted surfaces where things attach, the water pump and the front main seal. This is entertaining to me. Camshaft installed, a little bit of grease. Installed the Woodruff key, just tap it into place. Thrust bearing, the retainer plate, and then the cam gear. Uh-oh, we're gonna have a problem here. I heard a loud sound. What's going on? Well, time to pull things off. I don't have the proper puller for this front steel gear, and I really should. It's only like 25 bucks online, but it was a damaged gear, so I could afford to just hammer it off, because I'll show you in a minute what went wrong here. This is why you do not rush. Oh man, I mean, I didn't even inspect it, but look, it's got bent teeth up here, and what that did is, as I put it on, and I had these teeth in the wrong, at the bottom, it made its way around, and then you hear a crack, and you realize you've just taken off the corner of your timing gear. Brand new timing gear. It's trash. Little setbacks. Oh, now that we find the other steel gear from our other B20, we can just put that one on in place, and boy, it is such a tight fit sometimes. And then the steel collar kind of helps to drive that in using a big rubber mallet. You don't want to mar the surfaces, you know, just use your common sense when you're putting these on. And with that, I have a spare timing gear as well. I mean, these things are like 90 bucks or something, so I'm just really sad to see all that money go into the trash because of my little mistake. But these things happen, you know. You can't beat yourself up too much. Just be diligent, and hopefully you learn from me. Gentle hammering on the center of that fiber gear will get it to seat in place, and then rotate it around a lot, slowly tighten the nut as you work your way around. And of course, the 2 dots right there are the very simple and easy timing marks.
Platypus Man, and then he was in The Mask.
And Platypus Man, the HBO special, was one of the great 1 hour.
Yeah.
Now that that's all torqued down, I can start moving on to the smaller bits and pieces. The final torquing down of the bracket for the alternator by Swedish Embassy. That's a really great kit overall. And then removing the tape for the fuel pump and the distributor. Funny thing is, both the fuel pump and the distributor are used parts that I was putting back on the car from before I took everything apart. It ran fine then, and then when I put it back, they both failed on me. Here I'm at O'Reilly being impatient, not waiting for my VP Auto Parts order to come in, and I'm discovering that the front main seals are not available at your local auto parts stores. We need to get the engine mounts off of our other B20 here, which is my San Diego pickup. And I ordered a gasket from VP Auto Parts and a few other parts that I needed, like a front main seal, for a valve cover gasket, because they have a special gasket for the aluminum valve cover. So hopefully it's gonna work, because I don't fit. Turns out, as I was reviewing old photos and videos, I don't even have an intake manifold for Bruce, because he came with a Weber carb, and I ain't doing that again. So I'm gonna be sourcing another SU intake manifold, the factory option for these cars. Yay. More stuff to buy. I think I reached out to the Facebook Volvo Amazon group, and they actually came through with a couple of good options. And when all was said and done, I ended up with 2 intake manifolds. This is the spare B20, taking the motor mount brackets off of it, because the one that we have on the engine stand was from a 140, so those brackets are unusable. And then I spent hours and hours and hours with a drill and a wire wheel just cleaning up stuff that wasn't being replaced, stuff that needed to be repainted. All of the hours just holding things tight against each other not only destroyed a lot of gloves and really hurt the hands, but I actually got carpal tunnel from it. It was a serious thing. My hands were always numb. My joints and my nerves were so irritated that the passageway kind of just swells up, and that irritation really reduces the blood flow into your fingers. It took a few months to get rid of that once everything was finished, but it was not fun. The best advice for that is just take frequent breaks and stretch. Keep stretching your hands. Don't have those prolonged periods where you're holding something really tight, like I was with a drill in one hand and pliers or the item in the other hand. But here I am, just taking off all the rust and dirt from stuff and getting it ready to repaint and put back on the car. The wiper motor, I don't know if I covered that in a later video. I think I will get to actually rebuilding that on camera for you, so you have an idea of what's involved with that. It's a pretty straightforward process. The radiator was fun. There's a lot of combing of the fins and eventually painting it black. This is a B20 radiator, and our car's a B18. Pretty soon you'll find out the problems with trying to mate those two. $10 points if you could figure out that was Phantom of the Opera. So what I would do is spray paint in the garage with the door closed, because I didn't want bugs coming in and landing on the paint. And then I would turn the lights off, open the door, let it air out with the fan that I have in place, close the door, turn the lights on, do another coat of paint, and repeat. You know, these would look really nice in black, and I painted the backside to protect from rust because they are just steel. But, you know, the factory was unpainted, or at least silver. Actually, I pulled off some silver paint on this one, as you saw in the time lapse. Boy, am I going through gloves fast out here. Yeesh. It's gonna be this color, which is no color at all. But I need to protect from rust, so I let them dry off some WD-40. This girl right here. Right now I am working on the oil pump for the B20, because we are reusing the pump, but we have 2 to use, and we're gonna check which one has the least amount of wear on it. It's very simple inside the pump, and the important numbers are right here. 6 thousandths to 14 thousandths of play between the gears, as we see in the photo here. The other thing to check is the spring. The spring measurements, as we see them here. The relief valve spring on a B20 needs to be 1.54 inches, or 39 millimeters, in free length when it's fitted with a load of 13.7 to 17.1. I remember measuring valve springs with a little lever tool that will give you the amount of pressure that those valve springs put out. So I suppose you would compress it to 0.83 inches and see if you're getting 13.7 to 17.1 pounds of resistance. That's actually quite a difference. That's almost 2 kilograms of difference. So our best option right now is to check the spring length. Now, IPD does have a high pressure spring if you want to really boost the oil pressure in your engine. I've never had any issues with these oil pumps or the springs, and I know that these engines tend to last a very, very long time. Harbor Freight Here's our relief spring number 1. This is from the pump that came right out of Genevieve. See how close we can get to 1.54. It's literally at 1.5. Okay. Let's see how you compare. This is, which engine did you come from? Ah, this one's a little bit beefier. It's a little bit longer. This is the better spring to use here. All right, so that's the more tired spring. It's a little compressed, and that's our longer spring by about 0.2 inches. I'd say that one is right at 1.5, and this one's at 1.52 or 1.53. Right, let's check the wear between the gears. Put my gloves on. I think this is my 7th pair of gloves today. Throw these gears in. Now, the side where you see the collar, the shaft collar, that is the side that goes down like that. And the side that is machined flat, but it's not flat because of the wear that you see up here, that is the side that faces that cap. Now, 13 fits, and the maximum limit 14 does fit in here. Seems a little worn. Let's go up a size. All right, it looks like it's actually 20 thousandths on this pump. I'm gonna say it's no good. Put the check ball in, put our spring in, and line those two up. Start attaching our bolts. This is going to be 4 parts only, I'll label that. Here is our other B20 pump. I'll take our 14 thousandths and hope for the best. 14 does not fit, yes. Now let's see exactly where you are in the spectrum. Okay, so it's right at 12 thousandths. The 13 does barely, if I force it in, it'll start. It looks like we're at 13 thousandths, which is 1 thousandth below the upper limit. This pump is good to use. Our spring is in range. Don't forget your check ball sticker in. Actually, let me clean all this up, but it's time to clean everything thoroughly and then replace it. I will be putting oil in this now just to help it prevent a dry start. You don't want to have a dry start on your oil pump. That'll wear out pretty quickly. One further important thing to mention, in the Chiltons they say that these O-rings are not just any, square cut O-rings. They're actually machined to very specific tolerances to prevent any oil pressure loss in those tubes. So you want to really make sure you use the correct rings. Reassembling the pump is pretty straightforward. Just remember which side the gears go in, look at the wear marks, and when you're putting the spring in, don't forget the check ball and don't forget to tighten it kind of in a sequence around the way just to make sure that the spring compresses down evenly. I don't know if it's that sensitive, it's a very small spring, but just be diligent. Make sure everything's lubed up nice and good for a wet start, not a dry start. Now I'm tapping on the reinforcing ring that IPD sells. They say never hit it with a hammer, but if you know what you're doing, and sometimes I like to think I do, I could be gentle with a hammer. Now with all of that, install the rubber on either side of the pipe, the pickup pipe, and those are the square cut O-rings. And then once that goes in place, it's a little bit of wiggling to get everything to line up just right, and then you can attach the screen at the very end. Seems daunting to pull apart an oil pump. It's actually quite simple and pretty rewarding feeling when you know it's good to go. Here are the carburetors after a first round of cleaning, and you can see it's just a lot of brake cleaner and soft scrub brushing. I think actually carb cleaner is a little more potent here, and that's I went through so many cans of both I couldn't be sure exactly which one I was using at what point, but I think carb cleaner is the better of the two options. Brake cleaner is just easier on other surfaces. Went through a lot of gloves and a lot of paper towels in this time. Oh man, I tell you what. I wish now to take the time to introduce you to Bosch, Distributor Bosch, because it ends in the 007. This distributor has a centrifugal advance, which means as the rotor starts to spin at higher RPMs, it will activate these springs in here, which advance the timing centrifugally. Centrifugally is also a wonderful way to get me to be nauseated and potentially throw up, which is why I haven't been able to enjoy a state fair in quite some time. It's 1:30 in the morning. I need something to amuse myself with. So, well, there's Bosch. Now we're going to oil Bosch.
Takes a drop of oil there. Probably some just all around. Older distributors have a oil cup. It's a cup right there that you twist it and put a few drops of oil in. And a vacuum advance, but this does not have that. This does have points. And I've never dealt with points before, but they're very easy, as I found in other videos. So I will be using points in this car because it has worked. It will continue to work, and I will continue to adjust them because it's cheaper and simpler. With no extra wires. Oh, there's holes that drain out the bottom. So definitely don't over oil, but also don't worry if you do over oil. You'll just make a bit of a mess all around there. You know who else talks like that? Colm Wilkinson. Any Broadway fans out there? Oh, he's fantastic, but oh my goodness. Gosh, these things are just simple. I like them. I really like them. Good night.
So the funny thing is, the distributor, it was worn out. I couldn't tell right away, and we'll get to that in a later episode. It did leave me stranded a few times in LA traffic. But, you know, lessons learned. Do really go through everything. Don't just clean it up and go, well, it ran before, because that doesn't always guarantee that it'll run again. Trying to keep the dust out of the crankcase there, but now we have our freshly painted motor mount arms, which can be installed correctly this time. I actually put them on backwards in Genevieve. It wasn't until I put the engine in the car that I realized my mistake. Hey, human people, we're back. I had to go to the store because I didn't have the front or rear main seals. I mean, the kits that they sold are full of good goodies, but the original parts on these cars are all felt seals, and felt seals don't seal well. You know, while my order from BP Auto Parts did ship out today, I was thinking I could either add on to that order and wait 3 days, but then I have really nothing else to do on the car because I'm kind of waiting. I can't put the oil pan on until the front cover's on and the rear cover. So I didn't want to do all of that, and essentially I decided that if, you know, the only other work I could do is outside in the sun, but I'd be getting a pretty bad sunburn and I'd be terribly hot and uncomfortable for hours working on the gas tank, and I would ideally want that car in the garage. But Genevieve's in here, and Genevieve needs to go outside once the transmission mount is attached, because she's currently up on jack stands and everything's taken apart down there for that, and you know, she's not drivable at the moment. So the other option is pay a little bit more, and you know, how much does it cost to paying a little bit more for an O'Reilly brand Felpro, which is going to have a kind of a garbagey gasket. They will also sell you both the felt seal and the neoprene style. For an extra $15, I'm saving myself a sunburn by doing this now, so I can at least make some progress inside the garage. It feels like a lot of time was just spent sitting, disappointed looking, as stuff was not working out. But, you know, do a little bit here and there, and eventually you'll get it all. This was a creative invention that I was quite proud of myself for doing. Now, how can you say this ain't just the coolest and most accurate way of mounting one of those seals in there? Yep. Maybe it's really not, though, because it's still leaked. Nope. Turns out a 240 front seal ain't gonna work, and I gotta wait a little bit longer for my VP Auto Parts to show up either ways. It's too bad. We should all strive to be like little ant. Okay, Brucey Bruce, it's your last day outside in the driveway. I've gotten things more or less out of the garage. Moved a lot of things around so I can start working inside. That crossmember's holding me up from getting this car out of here and into driving in and out every day. So I've just pushed it all the way to the side. We're gonna wrap it nicely with blankets and then continue doing things on Bruce while I wait on engine parts. And after that, we have to change both axles in Bruce, so it's going to be a little bit more work in that respect. However, the other axle's back here. Oh, I still have to dig it out. All right. Not so bad. It's behind those exhaust pipes. So it's almost time. It's going to be a little bit of squeezing in and around, but I've got ample space to ensure I don't damage the car. Yeah, it's getting emptier every day. I really like that feeling, that really close to moving day. Here we go. Well, shucks, there she is. I mean, I would have recorded it, but it would have been embarrassing to watch me waddle with this thing. Just, hey guys, here I come. Whoop, almost tripped. All right, so I really enjoy these wheel chocks, wheel lifts, because you can just grab the car. Woo, slow your roll there, Jen. Yeah, see, there we go. One-handed operation. Back down on the ground. And I have adjusted the parking brake, so she should be staying firmly put. Here we go, let's get bruising. Hey, let's check this out. What a way to end. Whew.